Almost everything that you see here, the architecture, the layout, the character, almost got completely destroyed within living memory. The buildings behind me are cast iron facades from the 1800s. There's a higher density of this type of architecture here than anywhere else in the world. And they survived because of one of the most important battles in American urban history. The story starts with what SoHo was before it became SoHo. Through the 19th century, this was Manhattan's premier commercial and manufacturing district. The cast iron buildings, ornate, detailed, built to impress, housed textile factories, warehouses, and businesses that power the city's industrial economy. The Howard Building at Broadway and Broome, built in 1857, had the first commercial Otis elevator ever installed. These were not ordinary buildings. They were the architectural pride of a city at the height of its commercial ambition. By the 1960s, the manufacturing had left. The buildings were empty, rents were near zero, and Robert Moses, the most powerful urban planner in American history, had a plan. The Lower Manhattan Expressway would run directly through SoHo, connecting the Holland Tunnel to the Williamsburg Bridge. 10 lanes of elevated highway through the middle of the neighborhood. Every building in its path would be demolished. Jane Jacobs, author, activist, and one of the most important urban thinkers of the 20th century, led the fight against it. Her argument was simple. What Moses called urban renewal was actually urban destruction. The neighborhoods being demolished were not blighted, they were alive. They just didn't look the way planners thought cities should look. The highway was defeated in 1962, and SoHo survived. What happened next follows a pattern that is repeated in neighborhoods across every major city in the world. But SoHo was one of the first places it happened at this scale. Artists moved in, the lofts were enormous. Former factory floors with 15-foot ceilings, huge windows, hundreds of square meters of open space. For painters and sculptors, they were perfect. And because nobody else wanted them, the rents were almost nothing. Artists like Jean-Michel Basquiat, Chuck Close, and dozens of others lived and worked illegally in manufacturing zones because the city had no better use for the buildings. In 1971, New York City officially rezoned SoHo to allow artists live-work lofts. That legalization was a turning point. Galleries followed the artists, collectors followed the galleries, and money followed the collectors. By the late 1970s, SoHo was the center of the New York art world, the place where careers were made and serious money came to buy serious art. Then came the inevitable. The people who made SoHo interesting could no longer afford SoHo. By the 1990s, artists were being priced out. Galleries started moving to Chelsea. What moved in to replace them was not ordinary retail, it was luxury. Prada, Chanel, Louis Vuitton. They wanted the cast iron architecture, the cobblestones, the cultural credibility the artists had built over 2 decades. They were buying the aesthetic of a neighborhood they had played no part in creating. SoHo real estate today operates at a level that will be unrecognizable to the artists who saved the neighborhood. The original lofts, wide open floor plans, exposed brick, cast iron columns, enormous windows are genuinely irreplaceable. Nothing is built like this anymore because the manufacturing processes that created these buildings do not exist anymore. That irreplaceability is reflected in the price. So a typical SoHo loft, 1,500 to 2,500 square feet, the real SoHo experience, rents for $8,000 to $20,000 a month. For purchase, lofts range from $2.5 million on the low end to $15 million or more for the exceptional ones. The most famous residential building in the neighborhood is 101 Spring Street. Donald Judd, the artist, famously owned and preserved it as both his home and a permanent artwork. It's now one of the most visited artist residences in the world. The retail corridor along Broadway and Prince Street is one of the most expensive in the world. The same buildings that housed factories and then artists now house brands whose single handbags cost more than a month's rent in most American cities. The story of SoHo is a bit ironic because the very people who made it what it is, artists who came in here illegally and fought to live and work here, saved the neighborhood from demolition, but at the same time, they made it super unaffordable for them specifically. So the way this worked is artists came in because they had to have a cheap place to stay and live and work. And then galleries came in because, artists were here. And then luxury retail stores came in because galleries gave this place cultural credibility. But that's not unique to SoHo. It's basically a story of every interesting neighborhood in literally every major city. The question is always, who gets to stay in the neighborhood when they make it what it is? SoHo today is still one of the most remarkable places in Manhattan. The cast iron facades on Green Street and Broome Street are genuinely worth looking up at. Not at the store windows, up at the buildings themselves. The neighborhood that was almost destroyed is now one of the most visited and most valuable urban blocks in the world. Jane Jacobs was right. The city was wrong, and the buildings are still standing.